going to go through. Playing against burst decks, combo decks, particularly ones that care about your life total. So there's a major difficulty with playing against this stuff. Let's get the big picture. There's a major difficulty with playing against this stuff because you can easily. Let me try that again. It's hard to make their deck care about yours. If I'm playing a normal Duelyst deck, I've got some creatures, I've got some removal, I've got some attackers, maybe I've got an artifact or two, got some healing, just kind of a generic mix of everything. Right? I'm playing a normal mid-range deck or a normal kind of control deck. If my opponent's playing Mantra, all my removal is blank, or at least most of it. Like maybe they'll play a Geomancer, but generally speaking, my removal is taking a backseat because they're going to spend a lot of turns not developing minions. My artifacts may do nothing because they'll have lots of burn. They'll be running away from me rather than coming and tangling in the middle or playing units that I can get value out of. And they'll be playing things like Blood Rage Mask, which can ping off artifacts very efficiently. My healing is now overstretched. I need to keep my life total up as high as possible. But that conflicts with the fact that I also need to pressure my opponent. I need to make sure that I'm getting in their face because I have to kill them before a certain point because they have... Chances are they have inevitability. You can't heal infinitely. I guess you can with Desolator. If your Desolator is doing enough work, maybe you can keep the game going longer, but in most cases, the Mantra player will at some point stack up like 20 damage in their hand and kill you. And you can't act on their turn, you can't do anything about it. So even something like Eternal Heart will probably get chipped off along the way rather than keeping you alive right at the end. Same with Grove Lion. You know, the force field only protects from one thing. So if they have a Blood Rage Mask, it does basically nothing. So you can't really hope to just not die or just beat their deck the way their deck cares about. And at the same time, a lot of your cards just don't do what they normally would. You have dead removal spells. You have things like Macanto Warbeast that are just 6 mana, deal 4 to the face, which you still want, but it's not, you know, that card is nowhere near at peak efficiency. So what does this mean? Any opportunity you can take that will actually interact with their deck, you should try and take. So if they play a Lantern Fox, they're trying to get Phoenix Fires off it so they can kill you with the Phoenix Fires. So you should, generally speaking, bend heaven and earth to make sure they don't. So if you have to make a suboptimal player use a removal effect kind of weirdly, if you have to Blood of Air or Egg for Lantern Fox, just do it. They're not going to have better targets for it, and you're actually taking one of the rare opportunities you can get to stop them, to try and slow them down. Similarly, if they've got a Fox in play and you've got like a Blaze Hound, play it then. Play it now and attack that Lantern Fox and try and mill the Phoenix Fires. Anything you can do to make sure they don't get value out of it, because most of the time those cards will not do anything. So using removal suboptimally is better than not using it whatsoever. And having some chance to affect the amount of damage they have in hand is better than having none. Similarly, go ham on removing artifacts, right? Use your Macantos to just deal them 4 to the face. Use Holy Immolation as deal 4 to the face. Play your Blood Tier Alchemists liberally. Make sure that they... And similarly, save these units when your opponent doesn't have an artifact in play. Because that's one of the few things you can do is get rid of their Crescent Spears or Blood Rage Masks. Obviously, Muzzy wasn't playing them. But in the case of Mantra decks or other decks that are playing these artifacts, that's another thing you can try and do. Force them to use their burn spells as removal, or spend mana on removing your stuff. Most spell-heavy Songhai decks play Twin Strike as a way of efficiently clearing minions. Play around that as much as you can. So either try and have either 1 unit or 3 units in play. Or 2 big ones that don't die to it. Especially taking buffs into account, like a Crescent Spear. 8 Gates Twin Strike is less common, but it's still something to be aware of. But Crescent Spear Twin Strike happens all the time. So you basically never want to be in that state where you've got 2/2/3s against them, because they'll just kill them and draw a card. Which digs them through their deck, buys them tons of time, and obviously feels pretty bad for you. You're losing your stuff for free. So you need to make sure that you have stuff on board. Big minions, just high health minions, are great for this. Like, a lot of 8 Gates or Mantra decks don't play Onyx Bearseal because it takes up slots that they need for burn or cycling. Especially Mantra. A lot of Mantra decks don't play OBS, so you can really get them by just jamming like Thunderhorn into, whatever, like, beefy 5-drop you have. Like, Ironcliff Guardian's really good. Sometimes they have things that let them teleport around to escape it, but just anything that's huge and demands lots of removal is great. Or things that they have to kill that will trade for a Phoenix Fire, just like decent, like 3/4s can be really good, because a buffed Phoenix Fire kills them and they don't die to like random Gatatsus and stuff. Or they have to like attack with their face and then play a Gatatsu, which means they take damage, it affects their positioning, it can trip off an artifact. Just basically anything you can do to force them to kill your stuff, or deny them the resources they need to burst you down, is very valuable. So in the case of that last match, Muzziarella lost the games where they had to use Mist Dragons and juxtapositions too liberally. Rin got a lot of 2-for-1s essentially off Muzzy making Mist Dragon in a focus plays and things like that. So if you're playing against a deck like that and your opponent makes a Mist Dragon in a focus play, it might feel bad at the moment, but that actually puts you ahead, because they're using cards that they could replace into Phoenix Fires. And card advantage does matter. It doesn't matter in the sense that, like, I have more cards than them, so I'm going to win. But it matters in the sense that their burst is, like, roughly 4 or 5 damage per card at the top level. It's a bit different maths from Mantra, but if they have, like, 2 or 3 cards in hand and you're on 15 to 20, you're probably okay. And if they have 6 cards in hand, you need to be on, like, 25. 22 maybe. Like, a Mantra player can do a lot of damage with that. Especially if they've played an Adjudicator, you need to keep your life total really, really high. This also means you should almost never attack them with your general. It's a bit difficult because sometimes you have to in order to clear off artifacts. So taking the 2 damage is less bad than leaving them with a Spear or a Blood Rage Mask, if you can get rid of it. But basically, on other occasions, you should almost never attack with your general, because you're taking free damage. You're playing into their game plan by losing life. So you want to keep your life total really high and force them to use their cards on your minions instead of you. And they're trying to not do that. They're hoping to use their cards on you and keep lots of cards in hand. So you should try and provoke them into trading with your stuff, because now you're playing your game, right? Your deck is set up to, like, play some dudes, trade with your opponent's resources, try and get tempo on the board, go face eventually once you've kind of secured a board advantage. And your opponent's trying to ignore all of that dynamic and just go face. So if you can force them to make tempo plays, force them to make trades, removal, anything like that to protect themselves, that puts you ahead. That gives you equity in the game. So even if you're playing minions and they're just killing them every single turn, if they're spending cards doing that and their cards in hand going down and you're not dying, that's amazing. That means you're winning. So just keep forcing them to do that and make it as awkward as possible. Play high health units, play units with enters the battlefield abilities, opening gambit abilities. Stuff like Falcius is really good because it lets you pressure their life total for free, or kill a random like Rocket Terror or something without taking damage, which comes in really handy when you remember they have lots of artifacts. So anything that lets you hit them in the face without risking your general's life, so Holy Immolation, Mercantor, Warbeast, Spectral, Revenant, stuff like that. Revenant's a bit expensive, but still. And Provokes are also quite good because they kite a lot. They run away, especially the Reva versions, which want to set up Heartseekers. So big Provokes can actually do a lot of work. So yeah, in summary, try and make them have to care about your cards, because they're hoping to ignore them as much as possible. And just, efficiently remove some minions and then set up a burst combo. So try and make them care about your Thunderhorns and your Ironcliffs and your threatening minions. Try and make them care about your deck, care about your tempo, care about your board presence. And that way you can play your game and deny them theirs, not the other way around. Keep your life total high. Don't attack with your general unless you have to, like say to clear an artifact or to get rid of a minion that you otherwise have no way of getting rid of. Try and remove Lantern Fox specifically without damaging it, and things like that. Try and avoid your opponent drawing extra cards, like bend Heaven and Earth to kill Sojourner without letting them draw cards, or remove things like, if they're playing a Mogwai, kill it. Even Spelljammer, like try not to play your own Spelljammers, because drawing them cards is worse than not drawing yourself cards. because their cards, they can just kill you out of hand if they have lots of cards in hand, and they can't if they don't. And it's kind of that simple. That simple. But that's the main thing, is like, make sure they have fewer cards in hand than you have, like, health points divided by 4 or 5, and you'll probably be okay. And it's getting to that point that's the difficult bit.